Quiz time. And it's not even agree or disagree. I know you're all sad. This is just a simple yes or no. And you can choose to be vocal or not. I don't care. Okay? And here's the question. The overarching question is, was this biblical account recorded in all four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? Yes or no? Number one, Jesus' first miracle, turning water into wine. No. Jesus' resurrection from the dead. Yes. Jesus' baptism. No. Jesus' birth, the Christmas story. No. Jesus going back to heaven, his ascension. No. Jesus walking on water. No. Jesus feeding the 5,000. Yes. This account from Matthew 14 is the only other miracle in the entirety of Jesus' life besides him rising from the dead. It is the only thing, not even his birth, was recorded in all four Gospels, but this one, Jesus feeding the 5,000, was. And before I even say anything, I think that gives it a certain weight. So, here's what happened. Matthew 14, 13 to 21. And I'll say next week, I'm going to be preaching on the next 10 verses or so right after this. So here's what happened. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds who he had been with followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. As evening approached, the disciples came to Jesus and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. "Bring them here to me," he said. And he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, like they had as much as they could possibly want. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. That's God's word. Now, in children's Bibles, regular Bibles, all the Bibles, this story is often labeled, maybe always labeled, the heading is Jesus feeds the 5,000. And really you could say Jesus feeds the 15 to 20,000, but 5,000 just sounds better. Because that's, you could say, the main focus, right? Like that's the big miracle. That's where we're headed towards. Everything else is ancillary. You could say that because that's the heading. But there's more here than just Jesus miraculously feeding a whole bunch of people. Because this was not just a random day that he was doing this on. And maybe you heard it when I started reading. It said, when Jesus heard what had happened. I'm not even going to tell you what it was yet. But it was a day of grief, of deep sadness. When Jesus heard what had happened, that's what verse 13 says. And you know what this is like when you get sad news, when you get heartbreaking news, when you get the news that's not the news that you were hoping for. Like your brother has cancer, or your grandma died in a car accident, or your friend who had been sober for 2 years OD'd on a bad batch of heroin. Or fill in the blank. You know what it's like to get heartbreaking news. And so it makes sense that Jesus wanted to be alone. Because that's what it says happened. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place, and the other Gospels tell us he took his disciples with him. They went to be on their own, and not just to get away from people, not just to walk away. They sailed across. They got on a boat and sailed away from all the people across the Sea of Galilee because Jesus heard what had happened. And what was it? He heard that John the Baptist, the John the Baptist, had died. But John the Baptist hadn't just died. He had been executed. But not even been executed after a long and arduous trial, and this was like they knew it could happen. No, this was all of a sudden. And he wasn't just executed, he was beheaded. And it was on a whim of the new wife of the ruler whose name was Herod, and they were having a party, and she just did this to get back at John the Baptist, who didn't like that she, who had been married to the ruler's brother, was now married to the ruler, and he had called them out on it. She didn't like it, and she wanted to get back at him, and she just kind of did it because she knew she could. She called for the head of the person that she hated to be brought to her at the party on a platter. It's brutal. Out of the blue. And Jesus heard what had happened. It was her fault. It was also the ruler's fault, Herod's. He knew that it was wrong to do. Matthew 14, verse 9 says he was distressed. But because of his oaths, his promise that he had made, and the dinner guests, he did it. He called for the execution. And when Jesus heard what had happened, he needed to get away. He withdrew. He couldn't be with all these people. He needed alone time with his disciples to mourn and to process and to pray. And maybe also, probably commentators say, he also needed to get away because he knew that he was well known to Herod, that very ruler who had ordered the murder of John the Baptist. In fact, Herod, the Bible tells us, thought that Jesus was John the Baptist reincarnated, come back from the dead. And so Jesus maybe also thought, hey, I know that I have a lot of work to do here on this earth. I know it's not my time to leave this earth yet and be arrested and crucified and killed and be done here. So we need to go lay low for a little bit. We need to get away from the crowds. We need to lay low and not give Herod an opportunity to come and get me right now because I know it's not my time yet. Jesus had grief. He had deep sadness. He was aware of Herod's awareness of him. But think of the disciples also. Can you imagine what they would be thinking? Like, can you imagine the questions they asked in their minds and in their hearts when they heard what had happened? And maybe they also asked each other out loud, or maybe even asked Jesus out loud. Like to each other, if that happened to John the Baptist, could it happen to us? If that happened to John the Baptist, would God really let his prophet have that happen to him? So if that happened to him, was he really who he said he was? Was he really from God? And like if we're moving away from Herod, and if that happened to John the Baptist, could it happen to Jesus? And if it happens to Jesus, is Jesus the one we're following? Is he really who he says he is? And they all, the 12 and Jesus, they would have mourned together in their private, solitary place. They would have. Or maybe they would have plotted out the next few months and strategized and said, hey, we're going to go here to lay low for a little bit, and don't worry, we'll keep serving people. We'll keep spreading the good news that I'm the Messiah, Jesus might have said. But for right now, we're going to let things simmer down. But we'll be back. Maybe they would have done that. And maybe Jesus would have taken that time to reassure them that he really was who he said he was, true God. Maybe they would have done that, except they couldn't. Because as they're going out in the boat, the crowds who had been listening to Jesus, the crowds who loved Jesus, they saw. And I don't know, maybe there was a dock, I don't know how far it was, but as they saw him going out in the water, they went on the shore. And the Gospel of Mark actually says they beat the boat to where it was going. So Jesus needed to go be by himself with his disciples to process, and yet when he got to where he was hoping to go, they were there. This would be like, I don't know, if you've had a long week of work, and you know you've got a weekend of rest and relaxation planned, and it's one of those weeks where you need it. And you're already decompressing on the way home, and then you get home, and your boss and 3 coworkers and 4 clients are at your front door, and they need you. That is what this is. And we chuckle, but can you imagine? That would be, in and of itself, heartbreaking. And you would think, what would you think? I would probably say, I can't do this right now. Get back in the boat and go a different way. What did Jesus do? When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. Having compassion on it, like we would say, his heart went out to them. And he did this all day, and then evening is coming, and thousands of people are still around. We find that out later. Thousands of people are still there, and the disciples say, hey, Jesus, we're out in the middle of nowhere. We don't have any food. All these people are hungry. We can't give it to them, so we should send them to a town so they can buy food for themselves and provide for themselves, which is not a bad thing to do. They were actually caring for the people, because the disciples didn't even just say, I wouldn't have blamed them if they would have said this. They would have said, Jesus, we are burnt out. We cannot do this anymore. We know that you need rest. We tried to get away, and we love that we've been serving people all day, but we have to send them away now for our sake. We can't do this. But they didn't even say that. They weren't thinking about themselves. They were thinking about the people. They need food. And that's very reasonable. It's smart. It's kind even. But Jesus said, no, they don't need to go. You give them something to eat. And the disciples were not mathematicians, but I can imagine them looking at what they had, counting it up, 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish, kind of giving each other the side eye, giving Jesus a weird look, and saying, Jesus, what do you, I don't think so. And Jesus said, bring them here to me. He said, just bring whatever you do have, bring it to me, and watch. Wait and see. Come see what I will do. And one commentator said that this means, for us, this. He said it seems to be saying that we are not supposed to focus on our deficits. If God gives you a command of who you are supposed to help and what you are supposed to do, it could be to give someone food or friendship. It could be to take care of family. It could be to give them forgiveness. If God says, give it to that person, like based on your station in life, don't look at what you don't have. Don't give all the excuses you have for why you can't do it. If God has told you to do it, just do it. And then he said, watch the Lord of all existence go about his work. The disciples said to Jesus, we don't have the resources, Jesus. There is no way. But they had 5 loaves and 2 fish. And way more importantly, they had Jesus. And what did he do? He took it, he gave thanks, and everyone ate, not just a minimal amount, like to tide them over and then they'd get more food when they got home. No, it says they ate until they were satisfied. This was 15,000, 20,000 people who had not eaten all day. And they all ate until they were satisfied. And then Jesus didn't want anything to go to waste. He sent the 12 disciples around, and they picked up a bunch of leftovers. And how many leftovers were there? How many baskets? Oh, it just happens to be 12. Maybe it's one whole basket for each disciple. Jesus didn't even need to say anything. You just let the disciples carry their full basket of bread and maybe fish too. And they walked on to the boat, which we'll talk about next week. He didn't even need to say anything. So, there's a couple things that this means for us, but one, and it's meant to be challenging, okay? So, when you're tired or worn out or exhausted or emotionally spent, sometimes you need to say no. Sometimes you need to say no. Sometimes it's even good for you to say no. And sometimes when you're tired or worn out or exhausted or emotionally spent, it is good for you, or you even need to say yes. Jesus did both. When he first heard what had happened, he said, I can't be here. I can't be here. I'm going to go away. And then when he saw them, his heart went out to them, and he said, yes. And now, there are probably a few of you out there, and I'm speaking in general terms. I'm not thinking of anyone specifically. But this is another great thing to come talk with your pastor about if you're wondering, in general or in a specific situation. There are probably some of you who, as a general rule, need to say no more. Like you say yes all the time, and you need to be like Jesus and say, no, I need to go be by myself. But probably for the vast, vast, vast majority of us, what would be the right thing for us to do is to say yes more, even when you're tired or worn out or exhausted or emotionally spent. Because, if you're like me, you get into a habit of saying, no, I can't. No, I need to rest and recharge. And you get stuck in the resting and the recharging, and then you never actually say yes. I said a few weeks ago in a sermon, like rest and relaxation must not be the goal of life. It cannot be the destination. It cannot be what you do. I don't care if you're retired. I don't care what age you are. That's not what we're meant to do. We're not fulfilling our purpose if we're only saying no and resting and relaxing all the time. That is not how God designed us. That leads to an absolutely miserable life. Rest and relaxation and recharging it is necessary. But God didn't make every day the Sabbath day. He made one day a week the Sabbath day. So that you say no, always, so that you can say yes again. So it's not wrong to say no. But make sure when you say no, you are planning, I'm saying no to this so that I can say yes for a whole 6 days worth before I say no again. Now, I want to be clear. Some of you never say no, and you need to. Come talk to me. This is one of the things that a pastor is for, to help you work through this. But we are not here on this earth to rest. We need rest sometimes, but we're here on this earth to work and serve and love and do. And I've never thought this was possible before, but I thought this week that it's possible that this congregation might get fatigue, potluck fatigue. Because last week, at least for me, it was an emotional week. We said goodbye to Vicar Zach and Maddie, who were here for a whole year, who many of you got to know quite intimately. And we had a big potluck, a big celebration. Thanks to God for them, and see you someday. And next week, we have another one. Today is the off day. Today is the rest. We have another one because in, probably 60 hours or less, the new vicar, Camden, and his wife, Katie, they're going to be rolling into town. And we have 2 new people to love and pour into, and they're going to pour into you for an entire year. And then we will get to tearfully say goodbye to them again. But next Sunday, we will give them gifts. We will give them food. We will have a potluck. And then there's 5 Sundays in August, so 3 Sundays after that, get another potluck. You're allowed to say no to potlucks, by the way, and not attend or not bring food. But, be wise, be smart, be full of wisdom, and think strategically about when you're going to say yes and when you're going to say no. And trust God to provide. Whether you feel like you have what you need to serve or you feel all emptied out. Don't focus on your deficits. Do the thing and watch God work. He always provides. 1 Kings 17, he provided food for Elijah. Matthew 14, he provided food for 5,000 men plus women and children. Ephesians chapter 1, he provided spiritually for all eternity because he chose to bring you into his family. Matthew 14, he provided for John the Baptist. Can I say that? Yeah. He allowed John the Baptist to be beheaded. God decided that John the Baptist's purpose on earth had been fulfilled, even if no one else thought that his time was done. God knew his time was done, and God provided for him by allowing him to be executed for being God's prophet, and he provided for him by bringing him into the feast and the life that never ends, the life that is truly life. God always provides. Jesus believed that too. In his humanity, because Jesus is truly a human being as well as true God, he needed to be away. He needed to recharge. He needed to stay safe from Herod. He knew that he had ministry to do, so he went away in the boat. And Jesus had compassion. He risked his life to feed those 5,000 plus people. He knew that it might put him back on Herod's radar, and he knew. And for you, he didn't merely just give up the time alone that he needed. He didn't just put his life at risk for you and me. He knowingly, on purpose, gave up his life so that he could keep his promise to provide for you for all eternity. And if he's given you his free forgiveness, if he's given you his righteousness, his status as absolutely perfect in the eyes of God, if he has given you the promise that he will provide for you for all eternity, and he rose from the dead to prove it, he will also provide for you now. Whatever it is that you are wondering how it's going to work out, or if God is going to provide, he will provide for you. It might not be in the exact way that you want. No one wanted John the Baptist to die. But he will provide for you, like we said with the kids earlier, in the way that he knows is absolutely best for you. In this moment, tomorrow, this week, this year, forever on earth, and forever and ever. He will provide. He always does. Amen. I invite you now to join with me in speaking ancient words